Right now, the thing reading these words might be the strangest object in the known universe, and it's sitting inside your skull. You've been told you're a biological machine, a clever arrangement of meat and electricity, a soft computer that will one day be outclassed by a better chip. You half believe it. And that quiet belief is shaping how hard you push, how much you build, how seriously you take the few decades you actually get. By the end of this, the machine story falls apart in your hands. Start with a problem nobody warns you about. Every theory of the mind that treats your brain as a normal computer runs into the same wall. A computer processes information, one neuron at a time, signals firing, chemicals crossing tiny gaps, a relay race of switches. Useful, fast, completely unconscious. There is no reason a relay race of switches should ever feel like anything. Your laptop runs billions of operations and feels nothing about any of them. So why does your inner life feel like something at all? That's the question that keeps serious people awake. And the usual answers just push it around the room. Here's where it turns. A mathematician and an anesthesiologist looked at the same wall and asked a different question. The mathematician spent his career on the deep structure of reality, the kind of math that describes black holes and the geometry of space. The anesthesiologist spent his career switching consciousness off for a living, watching it vanish under his drugs, and come back when they wore off. Two people who study the mind from opposite ends. They met in the middle, inside the cell. Zoom into a single neuron, past the outer wall, into the living scaffolding that holds the cell in shape. You'll find tiny hollow tubes, structural beams made of protein, threaded through every cell in your body. Microtubules. For decades, biology treated them as plumbing and scaffolding, the boring infrastructure that keeps the cell from collapsing. But infrastructure can carry more than weight. It can carry information. And these tubes are built with a precision that looks less like scaffolding and more like circuitry. Each tube is a lattice of protein units, and each unit can flip between shapes, like a switch that can sit in two positions. Billions of them, packed into every neuron, a second layer of processing hiding underneath the one we already knew about. That alone would be interesting. It's the next part that breaks the machine story open. Because down at that scale, the ordinary rules stop applying. The world of the very small doesn't behave like the world you can see. A particle there doesn't have to choose one position. It can exist in a blur of possibilities at once, a state called superposition, until something forces it to settle. Hold that word. Superposition. A thing being many ways at the same time, refusing to commit until reality demands an answer. The proposal these two made is simple to say and wild to sit with. What if those protein switches in your microtubules aren't just flipping like ordinary switches? What if they're flipping in superposition, held in many states at once, linked together across the brain in a single coordinated quantum state? Not one neuron talking to the next in a slow relay, a vast field of possibility, shimmering across billions of tubes. All at once, they call the whole idea orchestrated objective reduction. Strip the jargon, and it means something you can feel. Your mind might be the universe doing something it can only do at its smallest scale, inside you. You're probably already objecting. Quantum effects are fragile. They need brutal cold, near absolute zero, the kind of isolation that costs millions to engineer in a lab. Your brain is warm, wet, loud, a swamp of chemistry at body temperature. How could anything that delicate survive in there? That objection is exactly the right one. And for years, it was the knockout blow. Too warm. Too messy. Case closed. Then the case reopened. Biologists started finding quantum behavior in places it had no business being. In the way certain plants capture sunlight, energy moves through warm, wet, living tissue with an efficiency that only makes sense if it's exploring many paths at once. Quantum style. In the way some birds navigate, there are signs they're reading the planet's magnetic field through quantum effects in their own cells. Warm life, it turns out, may have learned to use the very tricks we thought only survived in the freezer. Suddenly, the swamp in your skull stops looking so disqualifying. Stay with the discomfort here, because this is the part that should reach in and grab you. If your consciousness rides on a quantum process, then the thing making your decisions is something deeper than a tidy chain of cause and effect you could predict with a good enough model. At its root, it isn't fully determined by anything that came before, not random like dice, something stranger. a genuine fork in reality that resolves inside you and only inside you. Why should a person trying to build a life care about protein tubes and superposition? Because the machine story has a cost, and you've been paying it. If you're just wetware running a program, then your ceiling was set at the factory. Your discipline is a setting, your ambition is an output. Every time you tell yourself you're just not wired for this, you're quoting the machine story back to yourself like scripture. It's a comfortable story, in a grim way. It lets you off the hook. The hook is where everything good lives. Picture the version of you that opens the laptop at 6 in the morning to work on the thing nobody is paying you for yet. The machine story says that's just conditioning, just chemistry, a sequence that was always going to play out. The quantum story says something else entirely. It says the moment you choose to begin is a real moment, an actual collapse of many possible futures into the one you're now living. The choice is the physics, not the decoration on top of it. Hold that against what most people do with their 20s. They wait. They treat their life like a video that's already rendered, watching to see how it turns out, blaming the script when it disappoints. The science pointing the other way is the most practical news you could get. If your mind sits at the layer of reality where possibilities collapse into facts, then you are the author, writing in a medium most people don't even know they're holding. Let's go deeper into the tubes, because the detail is where the ore lives. Anesthesia was the clue that started all of this. When the anesthesiologist puts you under, your neurons keep firing, your brain stays metabolically busy, the lights stay on in the building, and yet you vanish completely. No time passing, no dreams, just a gap in your existence. Where did you go? The drugs leave the neurons running. The leading evidence says they act precisely on the microtubules, dampening the quantum dance inside those tubes. Touch that one layer, and the person disappears while the machine keeps humming. That is a strange and pointed clue. It says consciousness and computation are two different things, and you can switch one off while the other runs. Here's the friction I want to leave under your skin. Every night, you lose consciousness on purpose and trust it'll come back. Every time you've been under anesthesia, you handed someone the off switch to your entire inner universe and assumed they'd flip it back on. You treat the most mysterious thing in existence as a utility, like the electricity bill. The audacity of taking your own awareness for granted is almost funny, until you really look at it. So what does this mean for the way you actually move through a week? Start with attention, because attention may be the closest thing you have to a direct lever on this layer. In the quantum picture, the act of observation carries weight. Looking changes what settles into reality. Now think about where your looking goes all day. Sliced into 100 feeds, scattered across 1,000 notifications, sold to the highest bidder by the minute. If observation has that kind of weight, then a fractured attention is a leak in the one tool that lets you collapse the future on purpose. The builders you quietly admire all share one trait that has nothing to do with talent. They can point their full awareness at one thing for a long, unbroken stretch. They guard it like territory. They've discovered, without needing the physics, that concentrated attention bends outcomes. The science just tells you why the lever works. The choice to grab it is still yours, every single morning. And it's a harder choice than it sounds, because the entire economy is engineered to pry your attention loose. There's a deeper layer under the discipline, and it's the part most manifest your dreams content gets lazy about. The teachers worth listening to always said wanting something was only the start. You have to live from the end, to occupy the state of the thing already done, to hold an assumption so steadily that your inner world stops arguing with it. That is brutally hard. It's a mental diet, a refusal to feed the version of reality you're trying to leave behind. And now you have a physical picture for why that effort might bite. If your sustained inner state maps onto a quantum field held coherent across your brain, then wavering, doubting, refreshing the feed to check if you're allowed to want this, breaks the coherence. You collapse the wrong future by flinching. Let's talk about time, because the quantum view does something quietly violent to how you think about it. In the ordinary picture, the future is a fixed thing waiting up ahead, and you walk toward it on rails. In the picture, these two sketched, the future isn't sitting there fully formed. It exists as a spread of possibilities, and consciousness is the event that picks one and makes it solid. If that's even close to true, then the future isn't a place you arrive at. It's a thing you're actively manufacturing, moment by moment, with the quality of the awareness you bring. Most people manufacture their future half asleep, scrolling through someone else's, and then wonder why theirs feels secondhand. Sit with what that means for the cheap word, potential. People throw it at you like a compliment and a curse in the same breath. You have so much potential. In the old physics, potential is a fixed quantity, a number stamped on you at birth, that you either reach or waste. In this physics, potential is a cloud of unrealized states, and the only thing that turns any of them real is sustained, directed observation, the thing you call focus when you're being polite, and obsession when you're being honest. Your potential isn't a score. It's raw material waiting for someone to collapse it. The only candidate for that job is you. There's a reason the people who build remarkable things often sound a little unreasonable. They hold a state the rest of the world hasn't agreed to yet. They behave as if the company exists before the first customer, as if the body exists before the first rep, as if the skill is already theirs while their hands still fumble. The crowd calls this delusion. The physics we're describing calls it holding a coherent state against the pressure to collapse early. Every doubt is a measurement that forces the wave to pick a value too soon, usually the safe one, usually the small one. The discipline isn't grinding harder. The discipline is refusing to let the world measure you before you're ready to be measured. Watch how this plays out in a single ordinary week of building something on your own. Monday, you're certain. The vision is vivid, the work flows, you can taste the finished thing. Wednesday, a stranger leaves a dismissive comment. A launch flops. A number comes back. Ugly, and the certainty cracks. By Thursday, you're quietly editing the dream down to something more realistic, which is just code for smaller. That collapse, that flinch on Thursday, is the whole game. The machine story says the flinch was inevitable. Your wiring, your chemistry, nothing you could do. The other story says the flinch was a choice to stop holding the state. And the future reorganized itself around your retreat. One of those framings hands you the controls, the other hands you an excuse. Now layer in the people around you, because none of us hold these states alone. Spend your days among people running the passenger script, and their collapsed futures become the air you breathe. Their ceiling becomes your ceiling by sheer proximity. This isn't mysticism, it's the most ordinary thing in the world. You drift toward the average of the states held by the people you spend time with. So, the choice of who you build alongside isn't social, it's structural. Find the others holding impossible states steadily, the ones building quietly without asking permission, and your own coherence gets easier to maintain. Surround yourself with people who already gave up, and you'll catch their surrender like a cold. There's also the matter of what you do with silence, and almost nobody your age has any. The quantum mind, if it's real, needs stillness to hold a state, the way a long exposure photograph needs the camera to stay perfectly still to capture faint light. Every notification is a hand shaking the camera. Every idle reach for the phone in a quiet moment is a tiny measurement that knocks your inner state back to default. The people who seem to operate on a different frequency aren't smarter than you. They've simply protected enough stillness for a coherent state to build and hold. They went for the walk without earbuds. They sat with the boring problem long enough for it to crack open. They let themselves be bored, which is where the deep states actually form. Boredom isn't the enemy of building, it's the lab. And consider death for a moment, since the machine story has a very specific answer there, and it's bleak. If your software running on meat, then when the meat fails, the program ends full stop. The screen goes dark forever. The two thinkers behind this idea went somewhere stranger. If consciousness is a quantum process woven into the fabric of reality itself, then what happens to that information when the brain stops isn't obvious at all. They've speculated, carefully, that it may not simply vanish, that it might dissipate back into the deeper structure it came from. You don't have to buy that to feel the size of the shift. The machine story makes your awareness an accident that briefly happened and then stops. This story makes it something the universe is doing, and the universe is not in the habit of throwing things away. Either way, the move is the same. You're holding something that may be far rarer and far less disposable than you've been treating it. Act accordingly. I want to be honest about the limits, because conviction without honesty is just noise. This is a contested theory, fought over hard by serious people, and the experiments to test it are only now becoming possible. You shouldn't believe it because a video told you to, but notice what's already true regardless of how the experiments land. Your consciousness is real. It's the one thing you can't doubt, because the doubting requires it. And the machine story has yet to explain why it feels like anything to be you. The map everyone handed you has a hole in the center, and the center is where you actually live. There's one more practical thread worth pulling, and it's about how you treat your mornings. The state you wake in is the state you'll spend the day collapsing reality from, and most people hand that state away before they're fully conscious. The first input is a screen, a feed, a flood of other people's panic and noise, and your coherent morning state shatters before it ever formed. Compare that to the builder who guards the first hour like a vault, who shapes the inner state deliberately before the world gets a vote. It's not a productivity hack. If the quantum picture holds, that first hour is when the wave is most malleable, most yours to set, before the day's measurements start forcing values onto you. Protect the opening, and you bias everything that follows. Surrender it, and you spend the rest of the day reacting to a state someone else chose for you. And notice how this reframes failure, which is the thing that scares you off the path most. In the machine story, a failure is a readout, hard data about your fixed limits, proof of where your ceiling really sits. In this story, a failure is just one collapsed outcome among countless others still in superposition, a single measurement, not a verdict. The number that came back ugly described one branch of reality, the one you happen to render this time. The cloud of other branches is still there, still available, still waiting for a steadier hand. The people who keep building through the ugly numbers aren't more confident than you. They've simply refused to let one measurement collapse the whole field. So you get to make a wager, and you're making one already. Whether you notice or not, bet that you're a deterministic machine, and you'll live like a passenger, optimizing settings you believe you can't really change, waiting for permission that was never coming. Bet that your awareness sits at the deepest layer of reality, capable of resolving possibility into fact, and you'll live like what you are, the rarest kind of event the universe knows how to produce. One of those bets makes you smaller. The other one has 13 billion years of cosmic machinery behind it, finally folded into a shape that can look back at itself and choose. Think about that lineage for a second. The atoms in those microtubules were forged inside dying stars. They drifted as dust, got swept into a planet, churned through oceans and cells and creatures for billions of years, and arranged themselves finally into a structure that can hold a thought about its own origin. You are the part of the universe that woke up. That's a supply chain, and you're the product at the end of it. The least you can do with that inheritance is use it on purpose. Here's what changes when you take this seriously. You stop treating your focus as something to spend on whatever grabs it loudest. You start treating it as the single rarest resource you'll ever hold, an instrument tuned by 4 billion years of selection, and you point it like it matters. You stop waiting to feel ready, because readiness is a feeling, and you now suspect that feelings sit downstream of the states you choose to hold. You pick the state first. You build from there, and you stop outsourcing the verdict on your own life to people still running the old machine story. The friend who says, "Be realistic." The relative who wants you safe inside someone else's hierarchy. The voice in your own head, trained by 1,000 small surrenders, that says you're not wired for the thing you actually want. That voice is quoting a physics that may not even be true, about a mind it has never understood. The tubes are still there. As you read this, billions of them in every neuron, doing whatever it is they do. Maybe it's just scaffolding. Maybe it's the place where the cosmos quietly makes up its mind, using your particular brain to do it. The experiments will sort it out in time. You won't get to wait for the verdict. Your decades are spending themselves right now at the going rate. Whether or not you've decided you're real, so decide, not with a slogan, with your hands. The next time you sit down to build the thing that's yours, the project, the skill, the body, the life nobody handed you, do it as if your attention is the most concentrated force in nature, because it just might be. The universe spent its entire history learning how to pay attention through you. Don't waste the only instrument that took 13 billion years to make. Point it, and build something the dust will be proud it became.